He's Lance Reisland, contributor at Cleveland.com, also a contributor here. You can find him starting next week on Sundays for all of our pregame shows leading up to the Browns kickoff each week. Lance, appreciate the time this morning. We were just talking. The Micah Parsons trade has to be near the top of the list, Lance, of like, where were you when trades in NFL history. You're a little older than me, so you even have a deeper remembrance of some of these moments. Where does this one sort of fall for you?
Well, first of all, I like how you said just a little bit older. That's good. That's a good start.
I gotta respect. I gotta show some respect.
Yeah, it is. It's when you think of certain players, you think about them on certain teams. I think the one that stands out to me for sure is Joe Montana. He just did not seem right going to the Chiefs, but it is something where you're like, I don't know if it'll look right. And once again, I don't know if he's going to, you got to always be careful what you get into, right? You don't know if the grass is green around the other side. He had a lot of freedom in Dallas on that defensive line. We'll see what happens moving forward. But yeah, it was definitely a shock. Obviously he was not happy, but we'll see what happens. I'm never a big fan of, holding out and doing all that stuff. Obviously they want their money, but for me, he won't look right in another uniform, that's for sure.
Yeah, he's definitely going to look different. Let's get to the Browns here to start us off. And Lance, I'm curious, as the preseason the dust settles on the preseason and training camp, and we start looking ahead to the regular season, what was sort of your final assessment on these two rookie quarterbacks and just where they're sort of at this juncture?
Well, through a coach's lens, I think they did a wonderful job. And I know there's a lot of hot and cold with both people. There's a lot of fans that Shedeur has that are very vocal on how they feel about his playing time, per se. But I will say this. I think they did a great job of, kind of building their growth. And what I mean by that, they scaffold and they started at a 1. They didn't go to 1 to 10. And for a quarterback, when you go 1 to 10 and you don't go 2, 3, 4, 5 and kind of scaffold up, you get in trouble, right? And that's when interceptions happen. That's when things happen. I thought he did a great job in his start. I thought that's a lot of pressure. I also think Dillon did a really good job. And I've said to everybody, Daryl, and there's other people who said Dillon looked poor. And when you think about the results for 4 or 5 days, he did, because the product wasn't good. He wasn't very accurate. But for me, his ability to set pass protections, his footwork, he's very polished. So I thought he did a really nice job as well. I think both of them not playing early is beneficial, right? Because they're going to continue to learn. They're going to continue to get in and out of the huddle, footwork, fundamentals, reads, and coverage. They're going to see a lot more coverages now that they're in the real football, as you would say, with the real regular season. So I thought they did a really nice job with both people. Obviously, they're invested more. They took him first. They're invested more in Dillon Gabriel, but Shedeur will get his shot, and I think he did a good job of doing very, very well. I wasn't too pumped when he played really well, and I wasn't too down on him when he played poorly. It's just one of those things as a young player that you got to kind of learn from and move on.
Lance, by the way, I'm not ashamed to say when he got sacked, I put my wrist up at the stadium.
Oh my gosh!
So
wow.
for a quarterback, I'm kind of a troll, Lance. I'm sorry. So for a quarterback like Dillon, like you mentioned, he did look bad, and all the reports were that he didn't look that great in practice and training camp. How is a quarterback able to maybe look that way and then be what we saw in that last regular preseason game?
Well, I'll say this, right? So when you're in practice, you have a lot of everything is scripted, right? So everybody knows each other's moves, especially up front. Everybody in the secondary, everybody knows what they're doing. A lot of coaches, in fact, most coaches make it even harder in practice than they do in the games. So sometimes if you get, they script it to where it's really, really difficult. I also think he's learning, just like he did throughout his life, because he's been short forever, how to move. And you saw that in his last start, where he's able to move within the pocket and kind of find those throwing lanes. And then again, I think he's adjusting to speed. Obviously, he's adjusting to his receivers, and he just wasn't very accurate. And he wasn't very accurate with or without pressure. And I think that's what people, when they say the criticism of him that people had was true, because the product wasn't very good. But once again, if you look a little deeper with everything else that goes into playing quarterback, he was doing a very good job. But to answer your question, I just think he just had some down days, and you got to give some credit to the defense. And obviously, I think he learned from what he did wrong. It's just like Shedeur will with his last start. They're going to learn and continue to learn. But they make it really tough in practice. Everything is scripted in practice to make it look either good or bad for either side of the ball. So I think just having that freedom and going out and playing, both these guys have shown that when they're out there with live bullets, they're pretty good.
Talking with Lance Reisland here on the Fan Hotline. Lance, as I look at this Browns roster in both phases, like I think we know the defensive line is going to be really good. I think we feel pretty good about like the Browns' offensive line in terms of like being a veteran presence. Joe Flacco, we know what he's going to kind of bring to the table there. But I think the two weaknesses for me are like the secondary on defense and the wide receiver room on offense. From your perspective, like, are those the two places that you maybe are the most concerned with? How do they overcome some of those shortcomings in those areas? Or is there anywhere else that you're looking in terms of places where they might struggle?
Well, I think the receiver spot for me, if they're in 12 personnel, they're going to be okay. And obviously, Ted Tillman's got to develop kind of like he did before he had issues with his concussion. So I think they have high hopes for him. But if they're going to be 11 personnel, that is Jamari Thrash has played well. You and I watched him at camp. I thought he did a very good job. But 12 personnel kind of hides that a little bit. And Fannon's is a unicorn with his ability to move outside, inside. So. And that's what Kevin likes to do. Kevin likes to find matchups. And when you go 12 personnel, you dictate the personnel you get defensively. So, I think if they go 12, they're okay. But if they're going to go 11 and 10 and some other receiver groups, they're going to have to find some depth. And these guys who they have are going to have to continuously improve. Secondary-wise, obviously you have Denzel Ward. For me, it's not the corners per se, because the corners' success will come down to pressure up front. Obviously, Ward's going to be fine, but those other guys, they may have to help. I think they can play some off man. I know Schwartz likes to press, but if you can, step back a little bit, give up some things underneath, and don't get beat deep. For me, it's that one high safety with the injury that they've had to Emerson and Newsom having to move outside, and they've had Hickman, some guys down in the boxes, that nickel guy. Who's going to be the guy? Because I think that's where Delpit's really strong. Is Hickman going to be the guy who's deep? That guy's got to tackle to not give up touchdowns, and that guy's got to create some turnovers. That's something, even in 23, they didn't create a lot of turnovers. So that guy, for me, it's more that one high safety that is the concern, just because they haven't had a guy who has been successful back there and has, been the last line of defense. Because when you're in a pressure defense, you're going to give up some runs and some passes, but you got to make those tackles. And, a 25-yard gain is okay. A 70-yard gain is not. So for me, it's more the safety, that one high. And again, going back to the receiver, if it's 12 personnel, I think they'll be okay.
So it looks like Quinshon Judkins is going to miss at least some form or fashion of the season, and even by the time he gets signed, he's going to need to ramp back up. So do you feel comfortable with Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson taking over that running back room?
Well, I think an underrated pickup was Sanders, and here's why. I think the room is very good, and I think it's much better. Let me rephrase that. It's much better than people think. Jerome Ford, for me, has improved, right? When he first came in, he was all or nothing, so he was a home run or zero. This year in camp, last year in camp, I've seen the progression of, sometimes a 3-yard run is a really good run, because 2nd and 7 to an offensive coordinator is a lot different than 2nd and 10. So I think he's done a good job. I think he's improved his body in terms of being thicker and heavier and being able to get those yards. And then they brought in a guy like Sanders, who I think is a guy who can give them some short yardage. He can give them some red zone. He can give them some pass protection at 230. And then, I'm a big believer that Dylan Sampson is a guy that people are kind of underrated. He's a guy who is patient. He's really good zone runner, which Kevin loves to run. So I think I think Sanders was a big pickup because he gives them that bowling ball. The other two guys are going to rotate, and I think the other two guys are going to rotate more on who's hot, who's not. Because they're similar. Sampson runs a lot heavier than people think, even though he's smaller. And I think Ford does the same thing. So I think those guys will have kind of a chip on their shoulder as they get going here. So I'm much higher on those two backs. Once again, I'm much higher on all these guys because I think they practice very hard. And I tend not to lose the game before you play it, but I think their running back room is okay. And for me, the run game is more about the offensive line, especially in Kevin's fancy scheme, than it is the running back.
Lance, there's going to be a ton of scouts and GMs down in Columbus today, both from Cleveland and elsewhere. I know you've been sort of watching some of the tape on these two teams, and obviously the two quarterbacks as best you can with what bits and pieces we have of those guys. That's honestly the question I have for you, because we are all assuming Arch Manning is going to be brilliant because he's a Manning. But what do you make of him? Is he going to be as advertised? And what do you sort of expect from Julian Sayin as well, knowing what he is as a prospect?
Well, I think two things are going to happen. One is they're going to have it's not going to be jitters. They're going to be amped up early. There's 100,000 people. Both are kind of where they're the guys, right? So they're going to be amped up early. So I think for Julian Sayin, it's going to be, can he find Max Clare, that tight end? I think, everybody says, is this, a redemption game for Jeremiah Smith? It's not a redemption game for me is when you play poorly. Texas with, their safety tap, they're going to take Smith away as best they can. They're going to bracket him and put a safety over top. Buckeyes did a great job last year of getting to Mbuka and Tate and Innis and those kind of guys. So for me, I think Max Clare for Sayin becomes very, very important because he's going to get single coverage on guys inside, and I think that's very important. For Arch Manning, I think for me, his feet, people don't understand. He runs very well. And obviously he's going to be amped up. And when you're amped up, the easiest way, I would even think maybe some design runs early from Texas or some zone reads, things like that. Because when you get hit a little bit and you get in the flow, that helps you a little bit. And obviously, I think Weisner's a really good back. But I think if Buckeyes really have to worry about his feet, especially on third medium, as much as they have to worry about his arm, he has all the tools, and that's why I think the hype comes from. He's big, he's fast, he's strong, he can make all the throws. Obviously, he's a Manning, but for me, it comes down to I think his feet are what they have to worry about. So if I'm Texas, I'm worried about Max Clare just because it's easier throws to those tight ends, and if I'm the Buckeyes, I'm worried about Manning's feet.
Lance, real quick, 5 seconds here. Ohio State or Texas? Who are you taking?
I got Texas close. I got Texas close.
Okay.
I'm gonna say 21-20 Texas.
All right, we'll get you out of here with that. Appreciate you as always, Lance, on the Fan Hotline. We'll talk to you again soon, my man. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me.